Here we love to break down big, complicated ideas into frameworks you can actually use. And today, we're diving into a huge one. How do you build a startup that doesn't just fizzle out, but actually goes the distance?
Okay, let's just get right to it with a pretty sobering fact. We've got this data from CB Insights, and it turns out one of the biggest reasons startups fail isn't a bad product, or a weak team, or even running out of cash. Nope, it's because they build something that nobody actually wants. They end up solving a problem that isn't really a problem for anyone. So how do you avoid that trap? Well, that's what we're here for. We're going to walk through a 6-part roadmap to make sure what you're building has a real market need.
All right, first up, the startup death trap. And really, it's all about this idea of building in a vacuum. You have this great idea, you lock yourself away, and you build based on your own assumptions. And that, right there, is where so many new ventures just go completely off the rails.
Just look at this number for a second, 21%. A study found that almost 1 in 5 products that launch today just completely miss the mark. They don't meet the needs or expectations of the people they're supposedly for. I mean, think about that. 1 in 5 products are basically dead on arrival.
So that leads to the big question, right? How do you build something people actually want? And the secret isn't just having some brilliant lightning-in-a-bottle idea. It's about a process. It's about completely shifting your focus away from your cool solution and putting it squarely on your future customer.
And here's the thing. It's not about luck. It's about methodically answering 3 key questions. First, who are you actually building this for? Second, the market's a crowded place, so how are you going to stand out from the noise? And third, how are you going to connect with those people and, actually make money?
And that first question, the who, is so crucial it gets its own section. It all starts with getting to know your customer on a deep, intimate level. It's really about the art of empathy.
And look at this. This chart just says it all. There is a huge disconnect. A CMO Council report found that, 14% of marketers think their company is customer-centric. But guess what? Only 11% of their customers agree. We're all sitting here thinking we get our customers, but the data is screaming a very different story. So how do you bridge that gap? Well, one of the most powerful tools out there is something called customer journey mapping. And really, all it is a process that forces you, really forces you to step into your customer's shoes and see your entire business through their eyes, from the very first time they hear about you to the very end.
And the process itself is actually pretty straightforward. You start small. You define your scope, focus on just one type of customer, one persona, with a single goal. Then you build their backstory. What makes them tick? What are their biggest pain points? What are they trying to achieve? From there, you literally map out every single action they take, every question they have. And here's the key part. You track their emotional state at every step.
And what you get at the end is this brilliant little thing called a sentiment line. It's a simple visual that shows you everything. You can see the exact moments their experience dips into frustration, those are your lows, and you can see where you're creating real delight, those are the highs. This isn't just some abstract data. This is your treasure map for what to fix and what to double down on.
Okay, so once you truly understand your customer's world, you also start to see who else is in it. Who are their other options? And that brings us perfectly to our next section, mapping out that competitive landscape to find your unique spot. And the first thing to get is that competition isn't just one thing. Of course, you've got your direct competitors, the ones offering a really similar product. But then you have the indirect ones. These are the businesses solving the same problem, but with a totally different solution. And you've got to pay attention to both, because they're all fighting for your customers' attention.
Now, to make sense of all this, a competitive analysis matrix like the one you see here is an absolute game changer. You just plot out your features against everyone else's, and suddenly it all becomes clear. You can visually spot the gaps in the market, see where you have a real advantage, and even identify what the table stakes are, the bare minimum features you need just to even be in the game.
So you know your customer inside and out. You know your competition. That's huge, but now, how do you actually reach them? How do you cut through all the noise out there and make a real connection?
Well, one thing's for sure, the old way is dead. Just broadcasting your message out into the void with a megaphone, that doesn't fly anymore. As social media strategist Janet Flitt says here, it's about conversation, not spamming people. You just can't shout the same old ads at people and expect them to listen.
And this idea has a name, marketing as conversations. And it's a really fundamental shift in thinking. You stop seeing your market as a passive audience to be sold to and start seeing them as a community to engage with. The goal isn't just to sell, it's to create advocates. Because in this new world, your happiest customers are, by far, your most valuable sales team.
Okay,
So you've got a great product idea and a plan to build a strong community. That's fantastic. But a business has to make money to survive, right? So now we need to talk about choosing your revenue engine.
Now, there are a ton of ways to generate revenue, but let's look at 3 of the most popular models for startups today. First up, you've got your standard transactional model. Simple, right? Someone pays you once for a product. Great for e-commerce. The big catch? Competition is fierce, and it can quickly become a race to the bottom on price. Then there's subscription. Customers pay a recurring fee, which is awesome for predictable revenue. But you have to constantly prove your value, or people will cancel. That's the dreaded churn rate. And finally, we have freemium. You offer a basic version for free to get a ton of people in the door. It's perfect for software and apps, but the million-dollar question is always, how do you convince those free users to upgrade and actually pay you?
So at this point, you've got a whole bunch of really well-thought-out ideas, hypotheses, really, about who your customer is, what the market looks like, and how you're going to make money. The crucial question is, how do you test all this without betting the farm? And the answer is the MVP, the minimum viable product. Now let's be super clear about what this is. It is not a cheap, buggy version of your final product. Not at all. Think of it more like a science experiment. Its entire purpose is to test your biggest assumptions and get you the most validated learning with the least amount of effort possible.
But of course, there are traps to avoid when you're building an MVP. The biggest one? Overloading it with features. Keep it simple. Another huge mistake is skipping the feedback step. You have to get it into the hands of real people. And maybe the most important pitfall to avoid is failing to actually listen to what they tell you. The whole point of this exercise is to learn and be ready to change direction fast.
And that brings us right back to where we started, to this central idea. Building a business that lasts isn't a monologue. It's not you, the brilliant founder, just broadcasting your vision to the world. It's a conversation. It's about asking the right questions, and more importantly, building a product and a company that truly listens to the answers, and being ready to change when you hear something you didn't expect. So, I'll leave you with this. Are you ready to listen?